Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a fascinating and, honestly, an incredibly timely topic: the ethical necessity of keeping humans in the loop during AI decision-making. We hear constantly about how artificial intelligence is transforming literally everything around us, becoming faster, smarter, completely autonomous. But today, we're looking at the other side of that coin. We're going to focus on why human oversight isn't just some technical speed bump we need to get over, but an absolute moral necessity.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Think about this for a second. If an AI-assisted decision ruins a career, who is to blame? This isn't some far-off sci-fi hypothetical anymore. This is the reality of the systems we're deploying right now. When AI starts evaluating human performance, screening resumes, or even assisting in medical diagnoses, real lives are on the line. And while automation promises incredible efficiency, well, efficiency doesn't take responsibility. We really have to establish the real-world stakes of automated decisions right from the very start.
To grasp those stakes, we have to acknowledge how rapidly AI's role is expanding in these high-stakes fields. Look at healthcare. Large language models are now generating complex clinical documentation. They're transcribing patient interactions and creating what are called SOAP or burp notes, literally saving doctors hours of admin work. Or in customer service, where AI is supporting contact center agents by analyzing complex emotional interactions in real time. The capabilities are genuinely mind-blowing. But as we integrate these tools deeper and deeper into our workflows, a pretty critical problem emerges. Which brings us to Section 1, the AI automation illusion. Because, as the subtitle points out, fluency is not factuality.
Let's look at why this happens. We all have this tendency to interact with large language models and assume that because they write so beautifully and coherently, they must inherently understand what they're talking about, right? But researchers actually call these models illusion engines. It's so vital to understand that LLMs don't access some master database of ground truth to answer your questions. Instead, they operate through statistical sequence prediction. They're just predicting the most plausible next word based on their training, like autocomplete on steroids. And this leads to hallucinations. Maybe there's a knowledge gap, like a model trained on 2023 data, confidently making up facts about a movie sequel that hasn't even been filmed yet. Or you get inference time context misalignment, which is basically when you ask a complex financial question and the model uses totally flawed math simply because your prompt fell outside its normal training distribution.
And here is a reality we just have to accept. Check out this quote from recent AI research. Hallucinations cannot be completely eliminated from LLM and LRM systems. I want you to really absorb that for a second. Hallucinations are not just a temporary bug. It's not something software engineers are going to just patch out in next week's update. Because of the statistical nature of how these models work, making up plausible but false information is an inherent trait. It's baked in. And that makes continuous human oversight a permanent technical requirement, not a temporary crutch.
Dr. Ali Edamad, an AI researcher, shared a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying anecdote about this. He noted that when he asks language models for academic references, they frequently generate completely fabricated papers that sound perfectly legitimate. The core risk here isn't just that the information is wrong, it's the overwhelming confidence with which it's delivered. When an AI speaks that fluently and persuasively, it makes its errors feel settled. It feels final. If our human oversight is just symbolic, people are going to stop questioning those incredibly convincing outputs.
This false sense of security leads perfectly into Section 2. Machines cannot absolve bias. This is the myth of the perfectly objective AI.
There's this very appealing myth going around that if you just remove flawed humans from a process, it suddenly becomes perfectly objective. But let's break that down. When a human makes a biased decision, society has mechanisms to deal with it, right? A human can be questioned. They can be reasoned with. You can explicitly ask them to explain their underlying logic. But AI bias, that is an entirely different beast. AI decisions are so often presented as this neutral, procedural score or a flagged metric. Because it feels like the system just followed the rules, the decision suddenly feels closed off to discussion. Bias doesn't even need to be extreme to be harmful. It just needs to become harder to challenge.
So where does this bias actually come from? Well, it's not just inherited from bad training data. Bias is actively built into the technical pipeline. For instance, specific training algorithms can actually make a model more or less biased, even if you use the exact same data. Then there's selection bias, where models artificially favor certain answers just based on the order of the tokens. And then there's RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. We use this to align models, but it relies on human annotators. If those annotators aren't perfectly representative, the model permanently encodes their specific demographic preferences.
Fixing this requires actual human values to navigate those really tricky trade-offs between fairness and performance.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds into the accountability problem, specifically when evaluative authority shifts.
What exactly happens when the power to evaluate subtly shifts from a real person to an automated system? This is literally the critical choke point in the whole AI discussion. When we delegate a decision, the responsibility doesn't just disappear into the ether. It just becomes incredibly difficult to trace. Let's look at a case study from postgraduate medical education to frame this. Large language models are increasingly being used to summarize resident evaluations, right? They're helping promotion committees manage just massive amounts of trainee data. But Dr. Benjamin Kwan, who researches this exact intersection, offers a really clear warning. He says, "I don't think we should ever replace the human in these decisions." He strongly advocates for always having a professor in the loop. Because think about it, if an AI-assisted summary disadvantages a medical trainee, who answers for it? Is it the algorithm, the hospital, or is it the human who just deferred a little too easily to the AI summary? So the crucial point is how we define human in the loop, or HITL. We actually need to permanently redefine this concept. It's so often treated as a procedural detail, like a temporary software safeguard that we're going to remove once the systems get better. Actually, scratch that. That is the entirely wrong way to look at it. Human in the loop is an ethical position. It is a moral stance asserting that efficiency does not replace accountability, and that human judgment, with all its messy, brilliant nuance, cannot be fully automated.
So how do we actually apply this ethical stance in the real world? That brings us to Section 4, Cognitive Synergy as the Solution, Designing Co-Creative Environments.
Cognitive synergy is not about humans and AI competing for dominance. It's about integrating AI's massive computational power with human empathy and insight to create these optimal, co-creative environments. Let's look at the breakdown of these strengths. Artificial intelligence brings phenomenal, absolutely tireless data analysis, rapid pattern recognition, and scalable processing. It digests massive amounts of information instantly. By letting AI do what it does best, we significantly reduce the cognitive load on human workers. But remember, the AI is just the engine, it isn't the driver.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what humans absolutely must bring to the equation: intuition, contextual understanding, ethical reasoning, adaptability. While an AI can generate 1,000 variations of a design or summarize 50 medical charts in seconds, humans are strictly required to evaluate the relevance, the cultural nuance, and the emotional resonance of those outputs. True creativity and judgment lie not just in generating stuff, but in selecting and refining it.
This leads us right to the ideal collaborative workflow. We have AI acting as the facilitator. It's generating possibilities, assisting in brainstorming, optimizing efficiency. Meanwhile, the human remains the arbiter. The human maintains agency, critical oversight, and cultural understanding. In fact, research into creative design shows that the absolute best outcomes happen during iterative critique cycles. That's where the human reviews, the AI modifies, and the human reviews again. Optimal synergy uses AI as a dynamic partner, never as a replacement.
As Dr. Kwan so beautifully puts it, AI will be a good helper, another voice at the table. Whether you're in a high-stakes field like medicine determining a patient's care plan, or you're in creative design conceptualizing a brand new campaign, AI should only ever be a supporting voice. It can provide all the data-driven insights in the world, but it must never be allowed to hand down the final verdict.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to this absolutely crucial fact. Automated systems don't take responsibility. People do. Insisting on human oversight isn't about some outdated lack of trust in technology. It's about refusing to abandon our professional and ethical responsibilities. Making sure an AI system is actually aligned with human values requires human judgment to decide when a system's output needs to be constrained, questioned, or just entirely overwritten.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We spend so much of our time marveling at the technology, always asking what AI is capable of doing. But the real question, the one that is truly going to define our future workforce and our society, is what should we ask it to do? Human-in-the-loop systems might be a bit slower. They might force us to stay engaged and demand real explanations, but honestly, that is exactly why they matter so much. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you next time.